Hey, what's going on, guys? Fades here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're here for the first impressions of Pokemon Legends ZA. So, first thing I will say about this game, now that it's out, I will say it definitely has a general higher quality. It just feels higher quality than Scarlet and Violet. I won't lie. And I'll get this out of the way quickly so you kind of understand the perspective that I'm coming from here as I approach this first impressions video about Legends ZA. I thought Scarlet and Violet were like really not good games. Obviously, you have all the issues with performance and stuff like that. But even past that, I think the game does have some gameplay flaws. But past that, let's talk about Legends ZA. So it has that higher quality feel, and maybe a lot of that is I'm playing the Switch 2 version, so it just has the higher resolution and the performance, but maybe that's all it needs to have that higher quality feel. I think the characters so far, though, have been really interesting, and I don't know if I'm far enough to really have an idea of how good I think the story is going to actually be. I'm only 3.5, 4 hours in, so really not that far, just my early impressions here. But I think the characters have been really interesting so far. You have your sort of main companion, but I also think all the other side characters have been plenty interesting, and I just think the writing so far has been good. And I'll have to see where it goes, but I think that's been a pretty nice improvement so far. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the visuals just real quick. I know some people don't care about it too much, but I do think it's important to mention. It's a massive improvement on the past games. Obviously, it is an insanely massive improvement on the past games, but it's still probably not where it should be, and maybe it's just getting held back a little bit by it being a Switch 1 game in some ways. Of course, there's a lot of Switch 1 games that do look better, but I will say massive improvement, still probably not where it should be, and maybe part of that reason is this environment that the game takes place in, of course, all being the one Lumio city, makes it all feel really samey, and maybe makes it hard for anything to kind of stand out and be impressive in terms of the visuals of the environment. So that's what I'll say about the visuals, at least that way. I will say the character models, the Pokemon models, they look much improved. It does look great. I think there are some places where the game does genuinely look pretty dang good. I'd say especially like inside, when you're inside like the Hotel Z and stuff like that. I think the game does look genuinely good in some ways. So I'd say the visuals, massive step up. Maybe not where you want it to be as a Pokemon fan, as a fan of the biggest media franchise, but I think a massive step up, and certainly not something that I'm necessarily mad at yet. Now let's hit on the new battle system, right? The sort of calling card of this game, really the reason that this game is different from other Pokemon games, is the battle system being so different. Even from Legends. Legends was still kind of turn-based, still kind of close to that mainline Pokemon feel. This is totally different, and I would say really novel and really interesting the way it works. So, it's not a complete action game, right? But it does have those action elements where you're running around, and has, the cooldown timer kind of makes it feel like Xenoblade in some ways. So there is strategy to it. There's those action elements, and it all makes it feel super novel. But I will say, so far, for me, it doesn't necessarily make the battles more engaging or better for me so far. And I'll say this, the Pokemon games have generally not done a great job at utilizing their battle systems, right? And I would say the major reason for this is just that the difficulty is so low, and obviously it's a kid's game. So, as much as we would like it to not be, maybe it is a kid's game. It's aimed at kids, even if a large portion of the player base is not. It is aimed at kids. And so the difficulty just really has always been too low to really take advantage and utilize the battle systems of the Pokemon games. And I'm mostly talking about the mainline right here, but I do think it applies to this game as well, where the battles are just so easy. I feel like it's not really leveraging the battle system in a way that presents it as the most interesting self it can be. Because I do think this battle system could be really, really interesting, but I don't think that the difficulty so far has presented it as particularly interesting at all, and I don't know if it's going to get particularly interesting. I am honestly not optimistic in that so far. Of course, that could change. Like I said, this is first impressions, so we'll see. But I would say it's just as mindless as, the first 4 or 5 hours of any other Pokemon game that you will play, in my opinion. Hopefully this changes, but to me, it's just as mindless as any other, first 5 hours of a Pokemon game you'll play. And by the way, I love the Pokemon, standard battle system, so don't come at me, man. I have another channel with a bunch of videos on competitive Pokemon, so do not come at me. Anyways, yeah, I think the battle system, it might be good. I can't really tell, bro. I can't really tell, so we'll just have to wait and see if it really turns up the notch. And in terms of that, like other things, like besides difficulty, like I said, I just don't feel like it's leveraging that well what it could be. I will say, like, it's interesting to be able to run around, like try to dodge moves and stuff. It does feel a little wonky because you're not controlling the Pokemon itself. Like it kind of like follows you around, and like you can like make it use a move, so it'll like run to where you are and then use the move. Especially like it's a ranged move. So it does feel a little wonky in that way, I would say. And it's got a lot of comparisons to the Xenoblade games for obvious reasons, right? It has kind of like the arts palette that Xenoblade would have with the 4 moves assigned to the 4 face buttons. But the moves obviously are half, that might be generous, as complicated as like a Xenoblade art. So in that way, it's also not particularly interesting. So I just think that it is novel, it is interesting, and I'll just have to wait and see how much I really, really come to like it. But mixed results, I would say, so far on that. And then another point that has kind of been weird, right? And this kind of comes back to just the general higher quality feel that I felt from this game so far, right? You have those really awesome, like, fully animated cutscenes, right? You have the one at the beginning of the game where you see the Quasartico guys, yammering about, yapping, and then AZ comes up, there's Floette, yada, yada, yada. And then you also have the one where you're escaping the battle zone, and then Floette comes and just absolutely fires a cannon, not at those people, but enough to scare them away. So that gives it a higher quality feel. What doesn't is the lack of voice acting in those. It really gives it a strange feel, and it kind of makes me feel like Game Freak and Pokemon kind of need to pick a lane for what they want these games to be, right? Because they keep making these high quality animated cutscenes and these really ambitious games, like an open world, and then you have this game where it's like one city that is also feels like kind of open, and it's really large, and these really ambitious games. But the lack of voice acting just gives me a disconnect with that ambitious kind of feeling that they're going for. So to me, it's like Game Freak, like, let's pick a lane here. Are we going to make, a super ambitious game? Like, do we want a super ambitious game? Or do we want a game that's maybe not quite as ambitious, but maybe feels a little tighter and maybe feels a little better to play, to be honest with you? So I'm just interested in kind of seeing where that goes in the future of Pokemon. But I will say that just the lack of voice acting gives you like a real disconnect. I won't lie. And it's just kind of weird. It doesn't like bother me to my core about the game or anything, but it's just kind of weird, man. It just kind of is. So there's that. Let's see. Is there anything else I want to cover? Let me take a swig of water and think about that. Okay. Yeah, let me talk about the environment a little bit more. Because obviously, if you have seen any discourse about this game, you've certainly seen discourse about all the flat buildings and all the windows and stuff. And like, I won't lie, like all that discourse is probably true. Like, it does suck. It does make it less interesting to look at and explore, for sure. But I think just another reason that it feels like that is just like the total lack of elevation changes within the city. And like, I've never been to Paris, so I don't know if Paris is flat like this or not. But I feel like a lot of cities, you're going to feel a little bit more hills and stuff. So I will say, just like most of the city being like entirely flat, that doesn't feel great. And I think it also contributes to a lot of the samey feel that the game gives you, like not a lot of interesting landmarks, stuff like that. So I'll say just more elevation changes maybe would have been nice, just to kind of flesh out the feeling that the environment gives you, make it feel more interesting to traverse. So yeah, and I do want to touch a little bit more on like the Pokemon models and stuff like that, and the character models. They look great. They genuinely look great. So I do think, like, if you're not the biggest into battling and stuff like that, and you're a bit more of a casual player, this game will be up your alley, because it just has that like charm, and it doesn't look like shit. So it just feels nice, and the catching of the Pokemon feels good, you know. And I just need to play more to really feel like if it's a tight enough experience for me to say I love it. But I do quite enjoy it so far. With that, those are my first impressions. That is my first impressions videos. All right, I'm rambling now. Thank you guys for watching the video. Like it if you like it, and subscribe for more. I'll catch you.